Hello, Fair Family. I'm Susie. I'm a botanist and a mycologist here in Eugene, and I've been a member of the Wild Edibles booth in the community village at Oregon Country Fair for over 20 years now. My, how time flies when we are having fun. Well, welcome to this workshop on how we're using the virtual platform iNaturalist to create a project that connects people to the biodiversity of the Oregon Fair site, Oregon Country Fair site. Especially on this year off that we're taking. And so I'm here to let you know about the project and how to access it, and to let you know how to get involved by contributing your own observations from both past and into the future the next time you get to visit the fairgrounds. So before I start, I'll just say that you can access the project we created through the website listed here, www.inaturalist.org/project/natural history of the Oregon Country Fair site. You can see the little dashes in between the project name, or you can go to iNaturalist.org and search natural history of the Oregon Country Fair site through their projects, and it'll pop right up. And I will take you to that project page after we get through these 7 slides I have, basically introducing what is iNaturalist and how you can use it, and then we'll end at the project page, and I'll orient you to what it offers you. So yes, what is iNaturalist? So this is the platform we've created this project in, and many may already be familiar with iNaturalist, or iNat as some of us like to refer to it, because there are over 1 million people who use its website or its mobile app. And it's essentially like a social media for biology nerds, both professionals and hobbyists. It really is a citizen science tool, and that provides a way for people to share their observations or sightings of an organism, a plant, bug, or cool mushroom, bird, anything of interest. And they can share that observation, and it will solicit a crowdsourcing of community of iNaturalist experts who will then weigh in on what they think the identity of that organism is. So basically this community of iNaturalist experts come to a consensus on what they believe the observation is. And so in this process, experts can track the occurrences of certain species to better understand the patterns and distribution. This can inform best management practices, or, and then the observers themselves can learn and kind of use iNaturalist as their own personal field journal, which is kind of like what I like to, one of the ways I like to use it. In this whole collaborative process of identification, so the iNaturalist community finds a consensus in the identification and can confirm up to a research grade level of identification accuracy. So that's pretty cool. So, having a reliable confirmation of the accuracy of the identity of something is a really great way to curate the data as it comes in. So having that research grade tag means everyone agrees this is what this species is. And so I'm just going to show you an example of what an observation that I made at the Oregon Country Fair site. And you can see there's a little point on the map where I took this observation, and I'll come back to that here in a minute to talk about how you want to have your photos geo-referenced. But essentially, I was out there making observations for this project, and I came across this adorable little bee, got a photo of it. I could recognize it as, a bombus, a bumblebee, one of our native bumblebees. We have a lot of them. So this is just a screenshot of that observation on iNaturalist. And then I went ahead and called this bumblebee Bombus, but I knew that I didn't know exactly what species. So I called my friend August Jackson in to weigh in. He's a colleague of mine, and an expert on bumblebees. So I just added August Jackson, and sure enough, he was able to suggest an ID and suggested this was the yellow-fronted bumblebee, Bombus flavifrons, and apparently it is a male golden yellow-fronted bumblebee. So that just kind of shows you how the interaction between the observers and the experts occur through iNaturalist. And you can get some really interesting conversations that develop through these back and forths, and some of that has the experts discuss the evidence as to why they're making their claims for their what they're seeing there. So yes, as a biologist and a biology instructor for that matter, I love using this iNaturalist tool, and it's both as, like I said earlier, my own field journal, my own digital field journal, as well as a science education tool that in some of the classes that I teach. And I've also used it with colleagues in collaborative research to organize and store data that's collected by a lot of different people for a project. And because iNaturalist is curated by the California Academy of Sciences in partnership with National Geographic Society, it's presumably a well-managed, well-curated system with long-term cloud storage and data accessibility in mind. So that's another great feature of iNaturalist. But setting up an account and observing or posting data is really easy. You can either access the website to share data, and that's just iNaturalist.org, or you can download the free mobile app, which is what I like to use in the field, is my phone mobile app. And so I've got some screenshots here to show you how to make an observation through your phone. It's a little less than straightforward it's not as straightforward as it is through the phone app on the website, but it's still very easy. And so I suggest you give it a try. But so basically, once you've made that username and password, you can start making observations and begin interacting with the iNaturalist community. So again, these are screenshots that I took from my phone making an observation. And iNaturalist works through a place-based observation. So it's most easily used by uploading a georeferenced timestamp photo that's taken through the smart device or smartphone, so that you can make sure your camera settings are adjusted accordingly, so that they are sharing the data with the app. And if for some reason you have your georeferencing data turned off, or perhaps you have an older photo that doesn't have this data with it, you can always manually upload those observations in through the iNaturalist portal. You just have to make your own selection of a point on a map to tie the locality to your observation. So that is an important part of making an observation on iNaturalist, is that it needs to come with a time and a place. Very important metadata that's included. And although I'm talking about uploading photos here, iNaturalist takes in all kinds of observations. It can just be you could just say you saw something and not include the photo. But obviously the photo is preferable because it provides the evidence. Other types of data are audio files. So you have a bird call that you captured, all those Swainson's thrushes that wake us up in the morning at the fair. Other media's videos are perfectly acceptable ways of sharing. So lots of ways to share. Photos are the most convenient. And so what happens when you're ready to make an observation is you open up the iNaturalist program on your phone. And I'm going to move my little menu over here just a bit. But at the bottom you should, or somewhere, I have an iPhone, so on the bottom is a few different buttons you can select, and if you select observe with the camera photo, it will just open up your camera, and you can just have the option of making that observation within the app. So I would click, take the picture and then proceed to upload the image, or you can go to your photo library by selecting this little picture icon, and then that takes you to your photo library, and you can scroll and find the picture that you want to upload. So once that's done, iNaturalist will ask you, what did you see? And then you can suggest the identity of what you think you saw, or sometimes iNaturalist will make a suggestion of what the artificial intelligence of the program thinks it is, and that's based on how many other observations of that same organism have been made in that same area. So the artificial intelligence improves with the more observations that are made. But if you aren't sure of what you saw, you can simply select a really broad category like plant or fungi or insect, and that can get the attention of the experts that are following these particular taxonomic groups, like around the world, really. So we get some pretty renowned experts weighing in on the idea of our observations in iNaturalist, and that's a pretty great feature. Another great feature. Okay, so just to clarify here, again, I'll say that you don't have to become, a registered user of iNaturalist to be able to visit this project we created for the fair site. But if you did want to add observations to the project or comment or identify other people's observations, then you will have to become a registered user. But again, it's super easy, very convenient, it's free. And I will remind you again that that project can be accessed through this website here, as well as through these search terms. When you actually go to iNaturalist.org, if you select the community tab, it will give you a project link, and then you just click the link, and then you would search natural history of the Oregon Country Fair site. So this was a screenshot because I wanted to illustrate where that project link was found. And now I'm going to take us to the actual web page. I've got a browser open up here. So this is just showing you our actual project that we made, and you can just visit this, read a little bit more about it. It tells you about the natural habitats that are found on fairgrounds. And it also provides a link. My colleague Tobias Palika created this project, and he uploaded our wild edibles plants of the Oregon Country Fair plant list. So that's available through this project page. You can find out what plants grow on the fair site. And what happens if you click on that through our project is you actually get pictures of all of those species. These are not pictures that were taken at the fair necessarily. They're the pictures that are come with the species profile through iNaturalist. So it's still, they're nice pictures. But if you did want to see the actual photos of the observations on site, we'll go back there. Oh, whoops, I forgot to tell you that also there's a great bird list here through observations through an eBird link. So birds of the Oregon Country Fair as well. And we hope to just continue to add our lists of all the different groups of organisms. Wouldn't it be great to have a list of all the slugs and snails that live at the Oregon Country Fairgrounds as well? And the mushrooms, I know you guys want to know about those. So yeah, all of the features of the project can be seen here on our website on the page. And so there are so far, today is July 8th, Wednesday, and so far we have 143 observations in the project of 107 species that have been identified. And we have 49 different people contributing to those identifications, and then 13 folks have added observations to date. Some of those go back to from before we created this project, because when the project was created, we just sort of defined it loosely by the geographic boundaries of the fair. So any observations that through iNaturalist that had been made within these boundaries automatically got scooped up and included. Oops. And so, and they're all now visible for you guys to see and learn more about. Another final feature here is if you go to the stats page, the statistics tells you just a little bit more about the types of things that are seen, the types of observations that are being made. It looks like we have about 80% research grade identification on our observations. That's pretty good. Some of the things that might lead to less than research grade is if the photos aren't very clear and you can't get the details to be able to discern a certain species. We might not ever be able to get a full-on research grade identification. However, we might be able to get it to the family or genus, or, you know, obviously we should be able to tell if it's a bug or a flower. So we can get certain categories, but maybe not all the way to species, because the evidence to tell us what species they are might not be included in the picture that's uploaded. So the better your pictures are, the more likely you'll have accurate identification of your observations. All right, so it looks like most of what we do have ID'd are plants. Big surprise there. 75% plants, looks like about 9 species of insects and 10 species of fungi, and those numbers are going to just grow and grow as this project continues in the future. So we're really excited about all the opportunities that this project brings. The Wild Edibles staff, we've already been talking with fair managers about how this project can be used in the future. Thank you for listening to this workshop, and check out the project when you can and add your observations from the past or the next time you visit the site. And have fun out there, be safe, take good care, and fare thee well.
All right, so I'm going to talk about curly dock, or any of the docks. Truthfully, the one we're focusing on with the picture is Rumex crispus. Again, a European introduction, and it's a plant that's both edible and medicinal. So the edible parts are in the early spring, the small leaves are edible raw, though I don't like them raw, or edible steamed up as a potter. I will chop them up and use them in a big mix of green things to eat early in the spring. And then later on in the summer, you'll see these tall brown seed heads. And if you break open the individual seed capsules, kind of pods, you'll see a round brown or golden color seed that kind of looks like a mustard seed. And those seeds can be ground up in a food mill and used as flour, though it doesn't make bread. It has no gluten, so if you want to make bread with it, you've got to mix it with something gluten. But, you know, it's okay to make like little seed cakes with, sort of like pancakes, something where you don't need to leaven it. And then to me, the big use is the roots. If you dig one up and break the roots open, the roots are bright yellow inside, just like Oregon grape and golden seal, and it has a lot of the same uses. So in the old plant kind of doctrine of signatures, where people would think about how you use a plant often would be determined by the way the plant looks. And things that were bright yellow were associated with jaundice, and which meant they were associated with healing the liver. So I use dock root, I'll tincture it, and then use it for liver disorders. And, you know, how do you know when you have a liver disorder? Well, the big use that I find it's handy for is gallbladder stuff. A lot of people, over time, you get gallbladder. And you know you have a gallbladder problem when you have a little pain on the right side of your body up under your ribs. Then you need some gallbladder help. And that's when the dock tincture will really come in handy. And also, you can use it as a dye. The roots make the same color they are, that beautiful bright yellow. So it's edible, medicinal, and you can use it for art. All right, Oregon grape. It's Mahonia aquiliniifolium. It's also known as Berberis aquiliniifolium. The name keeps shifting back and forth. You know, the botanists argue about things. I like Mahonia. It's easier to spell. It has these beautiful bright yellow flowers in the spring, and then these long pinnately compound leaves that kind of look like holly leaves. And one of the common names of this plant is holly-leaved Oregon grape or tall Oregon grape. And it's easy to spot in the spring when those bright yellow flowers are out. And then, but the main thing that gets used is the bark of the roots. So you would pull up a plant and cut off the part that would be underground or nearly underground, and then clean it really good and cut it up into little pieces. And once again, you'll see it's bright yellow inside. It contains berberin, one of the same compounds in golden seal. And so again, bright yellow, good for the liver, good for the gallbladder. I find it's really good just as, I use it a lot as a spring tonic. Well, I'll make a tincture of it, which means you take the chopped up plant parts and soak them in some vodka and let it sit for about 6 weeks. And then you end up with this brilliant yellow liquid. And again, I use it for gallbladder. And then especially if you just have some of the kind of, I call it a greasy stomach, where you know, after you eat something greasy, you kind of get indigestion, but it's not really indigestion. I find Oregon grape is really good for that kind of thing. And then would you put the berries on? One of my favorite parts of Oregon grape are the berries. I find them to be both a medicine and a food and a dye, again, art. So I will take the berries, pick them, and make a jelly or a syrup with them. And they're really good as a very mild anti-inflammatory. They're stimulating to the immune system. So something that would be really good to be taking during these times of COVID-19, something to stimulate your immune system and help you deal with viruses. And then, as I said, I just eat it as a jam. I especially like it mixed with elderberry because then you get the 1-2 punch for antivirals of the Oregon grape and the elderberry. And then the berries make the most beautiful dyes depending on wool or silk, depending on the concentration, i.e. how many berries you use. If you use a few berries, you get a nice light sort of denim-y blue. If you use a lot of berries, you can get these deep brown purples. So it's a plant I grow in my yard, and I have a huge bush because I use lots of the bark for dyeing and medicine, and I use the berries a lot during the year. In fact, I have a freezer full of them.
So my name is Carly. I'm with the Wild Edibles booth, and I'm going to talk about two plants that are both edible and medicinal. The first plant I'm going to talk about is stinging nettles, also known as Urtica dioica. Nettles are found in wet places across most of North America. They are really distinctive in that they have square stems, opposite leaves, and an unmistakable ability to sting you when you touch them on sensitive parts of your body, like the backs of your hands or arms or anywhere really. So like I said, nettles are both food and medicine. You want to gather the nettles in the springtime before they start to flower, because once they start flowering, they start producing calcium carbonate crystals that can irritate your kidneys. So when you harvest nettles, you want to use gloves and have long sleeves on, unless you want the experience of your stinging arms and hands, which some people actually like. You also want to make sure to pick in a clean area, as nettles can concentrate heavy metals and other toxins. The best way to harvest nettles is to clip them right above their leaf nodes, and that will stimulate them to regrow, kind of like how you would maybe pick basil. And if you're, picking them for food, you want to kind of just gather the top little bits of the nettles. But if you're picking them for medicine, you want to pick them down a little bit further, leaving a few leaf nodes for them to grow back up from, and then you can bundle all the stems to dry in a cool, dark place. So nettles are one of my favorite spring foods. You need to cook them or macerate them, like chop them up with oil or something like that before you eat them so they don't sting your mouth. But they're really lovely, mineral-rich green that you can eat either steamed or in a stir fry. You can make into spanakopita or soup. We add fresh nettle leaves to our salad dressings. We'll add oil and vinegar, garlic, and nettle leaves in a blender and mix it all up, and it makes a really delicious creamy salad dressing. My favorite way to eat nettles is nettle pesto, and I actually typed up a recipe for you because I found this recipe is the best nettle pesto recipe. And the trick is actually to blanch the nettles for a few minutes in boiling water, and then to cool in the ice bath, and then drain them, and then put them in a food processor with some other kind of herb is nice. You don't have to if you don't have parsley, or you could also use cilantro or basil, but that's just kind of optional to give it another flavor, but they're good just on their own. You can add Parmesan cheese, some nuts of your choice, garlic. We like to add lots and lots of garlic, half cup of olive oil, some salt, lemon juice, and then black pepper to taste. And you can freeze that and have it all winter long as a really nutrient rich way to eat a spring green all throughout the year. So nettles contain iron, magnesium, vitamin K, vitamin C. They're really good to help with anemia. Can help, especially like due to, if you have a really strong menstrual cycle and losing a lot of blood, they can help to rebuild that blood and also tone the uterus at the same time. They help with inflammation in the body, which can also help with seasonal allergies. So people like to drink nettle tea a few months before allergy season, start drinking the nettle tea, and then and keep doing that through allergy season. They can also be kind of diuretic. They can make you pee a lot. So that can be helpful for, edema or other times where you might be just kind of puffy and need to get rid of some extra water. That can be a good thing too. Chickweed, Stellaria media. This is such a good green. I just love to munch this plant fresh in the garden. It grows in, it's an introduced plant, but you often find it in gardens or other, maybe kind of off a populated trail or something like that. Very nutrient rich. It contains potassium, calcium, chromium, magnesium, and also iron. You can just eat it straight as a snack in the garden, or you can make it into a salad or add it, just as its own standalone salad, or you can add it with other greens like lettuce or arugula, or you can cook it, steam it, and add it to stir fries or whatever that way as well. If you want to preserve chickweed, you can chop it up, add it with a little water, and freeze it, or juice it and freeze it in ice cube trays to use later on in the summer or the winter when it's not available. You can also make it into an oil. So chickweed, the reason you'd want to do that is chickweed can be really good for skin irritations, for any kind of itchy skin thing like chicken pox or bug bites, eczema. You can put that fresh juice, either just like make a poultice and squeeze it on the irritation, or use that juice or the ice cube tray of the fresh herb with the water on your skin. You can also dry it and make a tea, or you can make tea with the fresh plant as well. And the tea can just be, another nutrient-rich herb that you have with your nettles or other herbs, or just on its own. The tea can also be helpful for coughs, or you can use it, the tea to put on bug bites, the cooled tea, of course, to put on bug bites or skin irritations. And yeah, you can dry the herb to preserve it, or just make it fresh. That's chickweed.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tobias. I work in the Wild Edibles booth in Community Village, and I was excited this year to share with you a couple dozen plants that make berries that occur on the fair site, and some of which are edible and some of which are not. All right, so there's lots of great berries to eat at the Oregon Country Fair, but it's good to remember whenever you're interested in eating wild foods that there are plants out there that are poisonous. All right, so before you put anything in your mouth, you should know what it is. All right, so this is sort of alphabetical by scientific name, so no particular order. So ironically, we're actually starting out with a poisonous berry. All right, this is baneberry, Archaea rubra. And this is not one that you want to eat. You may be tempted by those red berries to pluck off a handful and pop them into your mouth for a refreshing treat, but this is not the one to do it with. Baneberry, it's the common name, should be a clue that this is not your friend. All right. How do I do next? There we go. Also at the country fair, one of my personal favorites. This is Amelanchier alnifolia is the scientific name. The common name is serviceberry or juneberry. Some people call it shadberry because it fruits when the shad are running. I grew up in Western Canada, and we call it Saskatoon. And it is such a popular fruit in Western Canada that they actually named a city in Saskatchewan after this plant, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. It's a member of the rose family, but it eats a lot like a blueberry. All right, and it looks like a blueberry. It's about the size of the blueberry. It's a little mealier. It's got a little more substance to it, less juice than a blueberry, but very, very, very good to eat. And one of my great aunts when I was a kid was famous for Saskatoon pie, Auntie Mary. This one, another fruit that makes a berry is the Oregon grape, of course, Maphonia aquifolium or Berberis aquifolium, depending on what book you look in. And the Oregon grape is it's grape. It's great. It's our state flower. All right. So Oregon Country Fair, you should know. Oregon state flower is actually this kind of weird spiny shrub, and it's pretty tart for fresh eating. If I eat the Oregon grapes fresh, I will typically prefer it in a mix of other berries. That's kind of a mixed handful. All right. Otherwise, it's puckeringly tart, let's say. This is a tree actually that grows on the fair site. This is Pacific dogwood, all right, Cornus nuttallii. And the dogwood fruits, they say they're edible. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I would eat them, but certainly your dog would. I'll leave that one there. The dogwood fruits, though, you might not want to eat them, but you certainly could in a pinch. Similarly with the hawthorn. Here, this is an image of a Douglas hawthorn. This is one of our native hawthorns that occurs at the fair site. This is in the rose family, so it's related to things like apples and cherries. But it's this is one that also is both edible and medicinal. But as far as, I wouldn't really consider it food per se, and that you wouldn't maybe want to eat too much of it, just because they're kind of astringent and dry. But certainly it's a berry that you could add to, again, probably that mixed handful of eating. Strawberries. Strawberries are pretty straightforward yum. All right, everyone loves strawberries. Just ask my toddler. That's his #1 go-to. There's 2 species that occur at the fair site. Both Fragaria vesca and Fragaria virginiana occur at the Oregon Country Fair site. They're relatively unmistakable. They're strawberries. They're small though. The fruits are probably fingernail size, right? Not the big honkers you get from the farm stand or from the supermarket. That being said, though, they tend to pack a flavor punch, right? The small size packs a lot of flavor. So really kind of a fun little snack. And also the three leaflets on those leaves, you know, they look just like a garden grown kind of a strawberry. So check those out if you get a chance to on the trail. And this is an understory tree, cascara is the common name, Rhamnus persiana, and it makes a fruit that looks all the world like something you would want to eat. However, the human use that this plant is known for is making you poop, all right? It's typically the bark of the plant that's used actually as a pharmaceutical grade laxative, but it doesn't necessarily make me want to eat the fruits, all right? This one is a salal, Gaultheria chalon is the Latin name, and this is actually in the blueberry family. All right, this is in the Ericaceae, related to blueberries. And again, like the serviceberry, it tends to be a little mealier, a little meatier. It's got a little more substance to it, a little less juice. But for me, this is one of my favorite wild berries to eat, the salal. It's common throughout our area. You know, it does occur on the fair site, but certainly common in the Willamette Valley, the coast, into the mountains, and very, very common shrub. One of our local floras actually suggests that it is so common as to seem undesirable, but the fruits are really quite delicious. And there is a native crabapple that occurs at the country fair site. All right, crabapples in general are pretty small relative to their domesticated cousins, and pretty sour. All right, so edible, yeah, schmedible, incredible. Osoberry. This is it's related to cherries, and you can eat it, but I tend to leave it for the birds. All right, it has that fleshy covering over the pit, just like a cherry, but the flesh to pit ratio is pretty small. So if you see these fruits, they are kind of a peach color when they're immature, and they turn a blue when they're ripe. If you see a ripe one, you know, try it for yourself. This is a kind of a cool shrub. This is the only place in the world that it grows. Actually, this plant is endemic to the Pacific Northwest, specifically the kind of the Willamette Valley, Puget Trough region. But again, not a lot of flesh for the bones inside there. So I'll leave this one for the birds. Cherries. There are cherries at the fair. These are weedy trees. All right, this is sort of a relative of a domestic cherry that has escaped the garden gate, so to speak. And as you can imagine, disperse the seeds by birds. Right, birds will eat the seeds. They'll fly. They'll poop out the seeds, deposit it with a little bird manure. And these things grow real good. But as far as fresh eating for humans, they're smaller and maybe less sweet than a domestic cherry, but they're definitely in that class of yummy edibles. There's at least one species of currant at the fair site. It just so happens that it's the stink currant. And for those of you who are familiar with currants, I mean, I find even garden grown currants to be a little funky. They got kind of a smell, they have a kind of a flavor. I kind of like them, but you know, not everybody likes them. The wild species of ribes, this one's ribes bracteosum, the wild species of ribes are very variable in their palatability. Some of them are stank and astringent and dry at your mouth, and some of them are super sweet and juicy and delectable. So I would say, you know, try the currants before you make up your mind. All right, then we've got a whole pile of blackberries and their relatives. All right, this is Rubus bifrons. This is the weedy blackberry that everybody in the Pacific Northwest knows. We curse it all year until July, and then everyone loves to find a blackberry patch, right? Good eating. At the fair, there's another weedy species. This one's a European species. This is the so-called cutleaf blackberry, Rubus laciniata. Basically eats just like the common weedy one. The leaves will be a little bit different. You can actually see in that picture those more divided leaves. There's a native black raspberry that grows at the fair site, and you can see the the drupelets, the little kind of like seedy clusters of the fruits on this are a little tighter than the blackberries. And one thing that separates blackberries from raspberries is that if you were to pull all those drupelets off of a raspberry or a black raspberry in this case, they all come off and leave kind of a hole in the middle, right? It's sort of like a thimble. Whereas the blackberries, the whole structure will come off and it has a denser, meatier center. So these ones are good for fresh eating. They don't tend to store super well or even hold up in a bucket. But if you see some of these black raspberries, you can throw some in your mouth for sure. Similarly, thimbleberry, Rubus parviflorus, all right? These ones are very, very delicate fruits. They're really only suited for direct eating, not even just fresh eating, but direct off the shrub. These are a nice rubus in that they don't have any spines, and they have very, very soft leaves that are quite large. And if you're ever camping, I wouldn't say to do this at the fair, but if you're ever out camping and you run out of toilet paper, this is one of the plants that people go to for that sort of ethnobotanical use as well. Salmonberry, all right, kind of a salmon colored blackberry looking thing. These occur at the fair. Some people like them, some people give them a miss. I'd say if you see some and they're about this orange color, you can check them out. As you go north in their range, up in towards British Columbia, Alaska, they do turn a more salmon color. The fruits tend to be darker. So, I certainly wouldn't eat salmon that was this color, but they call it salmonberry. And then lastly, but not leastly, this is actually one of our natives, at least as far as the blackberries, the rubus, lastly, but not leastly, Rubus ursinus, the Pacific blackberry or Pacific dewberry. And this is a very sort of trailing, vining kind of a plant. It has almost a bluish stem to it. This is the blackberry that'll trip up your legs if you're ever kind of out in the woods walking through an old clear cut or something. It's kind of weedy, it crawls along the ground, but it is actually a native species and good to eat, all right? There's elderberry at the fair site, and elderberry is edible, right? Elderberry wine is quite famous, elderberry cordial, and elderberry syrup. And one of the things that elderberry syrup is used for, also besides food, is medicine. And one of the things that elderberries are specifically good for is as an antiviral and an immune booster. So you can imagine that might be a particularly good friend in this crazy time. Not all elderberries are edible though, all right? There's red elderberries that the seeds are actually toxic. So you wanna make sure you know what you're doing. Then there's some straight up poisonous stuff that grows at the fair that makes berries that might entice you too, right? This is what they call bittersweet nightshade or climbing nightshade. And the nightshades, that whole family is the tomatoes, potatoes, that kind of thing, which includes tobacco and includes, some things that'll, what do I say, lend themselves to astral travel, I guess. And then some things will just like straight up kill you. So don't eat the fruits of the bittersweet nightshade. Just don't do it. There's also another solanum species out there, Solanum nigrum, the black nightshade. This is not good food. This can hurt you if you put it in your mouth, all right? Here's one that's sort of not edible, but not necessarily like dangerous. Snowberry, everyone will recognize the white berries of the snowberry. They tend to be pretty high in saponin compounds, which are sort of soap-like compounds. So not particularly desirable. There's a coniferous tree that grows on the fair site that makes a red berry-like structure. The red aril of the Taxus brevifolia or the Pacific yew might look like a berry, but it's actually more closely related to a fir cone or a pine cone in terms of sort of anatomy and botanical origin. Taxus brevifolia got famous even back into the 80s. They discovered a compound in this plant that kills cancer cells. And most cancer drugs work by killing cells, all right? So in general, I don't want to eat things that are going to kill cells. Another berry you wouldn't want to eat are the white berries of the poison oak. All right, everyone should know poison oak. There's not a ton of it at the fair, but there is some. 3 leaflets of 3, let it be. You probably heard that when you were a kid. And then actually lastly, but not leastly, Vaccinium parvifolium. This is one of several native species of huckleberry, which are related to blueberries and cranberries and a bunch of good eating stuff. The one species that we do have at the fair site is this one, Vaccinium parvifolium. It has a red berry when it's ripe and is somewhat distinctive the shrubbery itself, and it has these green stems that are sort of ridged along the stems themselves. So I know it was kind of a whirlwind tour, but there's so many great plants at the country fair, and I find that the berries are particularly enticing to people of all ages. It's real important to know which ones you can eat and enjoy and use to connect yourself to that landscape, and which ones to avoid. So thank you very much, and hopefully if you are interested in wild foods, you seek more information about botanical identification and uses.